few days back, I sent out this tweet talking about how switching my career has helped me to be able to save up to 70% of my income each and every month. And I got a lot of interactions on that tweet, and people were really curious just to know exactly what I did in order to achieve that. So in this video, I want to share with you guys the exact process that I went through in order to switch my career and increase my income. So I'll actually be taking you guys step by step with everything that I did from the very first role that I had up to the point where I was able to make that switch. So you want to watch until the end of the video if you want all those tips, and hopefully they can help you to actually level up your own career or even do a career switch like I did. So be sure to stick around until the end. So I'm going to start by giving you guys a little bit of background in terms of what I studied. So I studied right here at the University of Cape Town, or in Cape Town, and I have a degree in international relations. Although I really enjoyed what I studied, it really didn't help me in terms of actually securing employment afterwards. The industry I was really trying to get into seemed very, very small, and it just became quite almost impossible for me to actually get into it. So my very first role was actually in a fintech company working in customer service. I was there for a few months. A team leader role came up, and I was like, you know what? I'm already here. I might as well shoot my shot, right? So I went ahead, I applied for that role. Even though I was very, very new to that company, I actually was able to still secure it, which is why I am a very, very proud advocate of shooting your shot, because you never know what will happen, right? So that really did work in my favor, and I got that team lead role, right? So while I was in that team lead role, this other new role popped up just a few months later, and it was the product specialist role. And I was like, you know what, I'm actually going to go for that role, because at that point I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do in terms of my career, and I was just trying to find a little more direction in terms of what I should be doing in order to just build a career to begin with, right? So I applied for that product specialist role, and I got it. And in that product specialist role is where the whole planning really started. So in that role, I was exposed to a lot of the other business that happened in the company. So I got to step out of the customer service department a lot more and interact with like different departments. And one of the departments I actually got to interact with was the engineering department, and they had what they call Scrum teams, right? And in the Scrum team, they had the developers, the guys who actually code, and then they had the product owners, the guys who gave direction in terms of what should be happening with the product, and then they had the Scrum Master who played this facilitator, coaching role, an enabler role, and just impediment remover role, which I found very fascinating. So based on the interactions that I had with those teams, I decided that, you know what, I want to aim for the Scrum Master role, right? And that is really where my planning began. So there's two things that I want to highlight in terms of what actually allowed me to advance in those three roles so quickly in that company. So the very first thing is the company itself. So that company that I worked for, I will not name it for obvious reasons, but that company was very open to growth. So they allowed me to actually grow based on my potential. So because I did see potential, I was able to get those roles, even though I didn't have as much experience and I hadn't been in the company for as long as maybe the other candidates had been, right? So they really were supportive in terms of just allowing me to advance based on my potential. So that was the very big thing that really enabled me to get to that product specialist role, which was again my third role in that company. And then the second thing that really played in my favor, and I am so grateful for, is that I had a fantastic manager. And when I say fantastic, I mean literally fantastic. She was so supportive, very open to hearing about my goals and so on, right? So she really did help me to advance within the company. So those two things really played in my favor. So let's get back to my plan now. So in that product specialist role, I've identified that I want to be a Scrum Master, and then now I was actually putting together my plan. So here is what I initially identified as the things that I needed to do in order to achieve my goal of becoming a Scrum Master. So I've actually written some of them down here because I just do not want to miss anything. So the very first thing that I identified was that I needed to get certified. So there are certifications for the role that I wanted, which was a Scrum Master role, and I identified the certificate that I wanted, and then I started actually working towards that, right? So I studied the whole industry in terms of Agile, so I needed to know exactly what a Scrum Master did and how they fit into the whole equation of the Scrum team, right? So that was the very first thing I identified as something that I needed to do. And just like a little also like side note is that certification actually cost me $200. So it was a $200 investment that really has been paying dividends. The second thing that I did was actually job shadowing. So I took advantage of the fact that the company that I was in really was enabling and empowering me to actually explore different roles, and I approached a Scrum Master in that company and I was like, you know, I want to become a Scrum Master, can I shadow you for a month or two, right? And it ended up actually being more than 2 months, and I just followed this person as they did their job, so I could understand exactly what they did on a day-to-day basis. And during that shadowing actually is where I got a lot of pointers in terms of what I needed to do to succeed in getting a Scrum Master role, and some of the things that I needed to learn and certifications that I needed to look at, right? So job shadowing is a definite class. I will always recommend that one because it will help you to actually see what the day-to-day business is like in that role that you are aiming for. Other thing that I actually did, and very, very crucial actually, I must really emphasize this one, is that I built a very strong network. So I really pushed myself outside of my comfort zone and I went out and networked. So outside of just networking with the Scrum Masters in the company that I worked for, I went out and I actually downloaded the app Meetup, and I got a lot of meetups from there where Scrum Masters were meeting, like professional meetups, and I actually went to these meetups even though I wasn't a Scrum Master yet. I knew I just needed to get my foot in the door, right? So I attended a lot of meetups, and from those meetups I was actually able to actually start building a network of people outside of the company that I was in that were in a Scrum Master role, or were previously in a Scrum Master role, or in a product owner role, or just in the industry that I was trying to get into, right? So definitely networking is super important, because that network is actually what allowed me to learn a lot more about what the role entailed and how I should actually go about getting my foot in the door and getting my very first role. So networking is a very big one in my career switch story. There are actually two things I really want to highlight when it comes to networking that I learned in the whole process. Is that one, networking definitely does take time, so to give it time, and remember it is a give and take. So you want to make sure that you're offering the other person something so that they can feel free to also add value into your own life, because that will really help you to build that really strong network. And the second thing that was very important was just being proactive, and because it really did require me to really put myself out there, go to meetups where I knew no one, ask for people's numbers, DM people on LinkedIn. I literally did everything to connect with the people that I knew I needed to connect with in order to just get my foot in the door and get just people to recognize who I was, and so on. Oh, I almost even forgot, right? The third thing that's super important when it comes to networking is maintaining contact. So after you get that person to connect with you, maintain that contact. Make sure that that person actually remembers who you are. You don't want to just get their number or just connect on LinkedIn and then it's just crickets from there. You want to maintain that relationship so that when you get to a point where you actually are looking for a role, or you are out in the market and you are looking to get your very first position, that person recognizes you, and it's not a thing of you're just showing up now because you want something, right? You definitely do not want to make that impression, because that is not a great impression to make. After I did all of this literally took me an entire year, so I dedicated an entire year to this plan, right? So once I had my certification, I had done job shadowing, I had developed quite a network. actually started to look for work, right? And that is where it really gets interesting. I will not lie, it was definitely hard to get interviews because I just had zero experience as a Scrum Master. I was basically looking for my very first role. And a note here as well, because someone did ask me this question on Twitter, I did not just leave my job before I actually got a job. So I was doing all of those things, getting the certification, networking, job shadowing while I had a job. And even when I was job hunting, I still had a job. So I was literally just looking for a job that would replace my current job. So that's another thing that I would really advise people to do, is just not quit your current job while you're trying to go up your next career, because that is quite a tricky one to be in, because that leaves you with no income, right? Or maybe it leaves you with less income if you have multiple streams of income and you're a part of the small citizen freedom community. But anyway, that is one thing that I really just wanted to highlight there, because someone did ask that on Twitter. But let's actually move on to the job hunt, right? So job hunting was not a walk in the park. It was hard because I had zero experience. As I said, I was looking for my very first opportunity and my very first role. So in my job hunt, I sent out hundreds of applications probably. I went to quite a few interviews, but I never really got anything until I started reaching out to that strong network I referred to that I built in my whole plan, right? So I went back to that network and I started actually messaging people and being like, hi, it's Tando. I am actually ready now to actually get into this industry and my certification. I really think I'm ready to get my first role. So I started just sharing my CV with people that were in my network, and then the one person I actually messaged on WhatsApp and I was like, hi, you know, I'm ready and looking for a role if you know of anything. And I was fortunate enough to find out that their company was actually, not even their company, the company they worked for was actually hiring for a Scrum Master. So they were able to actually take my CV and recommend me to their employer, which got me my very first interview at the company that I currently work at, right? So I got the recommendation from that strong network that I built, and then I got the interview. And in the interview, guys, I practiced the interview. Like, that's no lie. Like, I was ready for that interview. So by the time the interview came, I was ready with everything. I told them my whole story so that they would really see the whole journey that I had been through in order to get there, so that if when they're looking at my experience, it wouldn't overshadow the fact that I actually really worked hard to get to the point where I was able to even get an interview with them, right? So I got the interview, and after going through the entire process and getting a very good reference from my manager, who was phenomenal. As I said, she had actually known that I was looking for a role as a Scrum Master. I said, like, she had allowed me to job shadow, so she was very much aware that I was trying to become a Scrum Master. So by the time that they actually called her for a reference, she was able to give me a very good reference, because we had that very open and transparent relationship, right? So she gave me the reference, and I was actually able to land the very first role that I actually currently am in right now. So that is how I managed to switch my career and double my income, right? So the double my income thing, it really has to do with the industry that I'm in, right? As a Scrum Master, I work with engineers, or I work in Scrum teams, right? And IT is just notorious, is that the right word? Anyway, it's just known for paying well, right? So the Scrum Master role is a well-paid role within the IT industry, obviously not as well-paid as developers and so on, but it was very much well-paid compared to what I had been getting in my previous roles. So that is the exact process that I followed. I hope it shed some light in terms of what exactly that I did in order to switch careers and increase my income so much, because that is very crucial in terms of my financial independence journey and trying to retire early. If you do have any questions and I just simply didn't answer the things that you were looking for, please do leave them in the comments below, and I'll be very happy to just answer some of your questions and clarify a few things. And yeah, that is basically how I managed to do it, guys. And I definitely do believe that everyone is capable of doing it, but it definitely takes quite a while, because I remember even when I was trying to be a Scrum Master, I met a few people that were also trying to be Scrum Masters but gave up in the process just because it was just so hard to break into the industry with zero experience. So before I actually forget, I wanted to address why I actually switched careers. So I have a few reasons, but I've highlighted the most important. The first one is I wanted a career. So as I said, I was literally not thinking about career when I was looking for a job. I was literally just looking for a job so I could make an income and leave, right? So once I got in the job thing covered and had an income, I really started to think about careers and what I really wanted to do for a living and what skills I really wanted to develop and contribute to the industry that I was in, right? And the second thing that really was a driving factor in terms of doing my career switch is that it was the role that I chose really spoke to the things that I enjoy doing. So I really enjoy helping people succeed, right? So it really enabled me to literally made my job making other people's jobs easier and making sure that they succeed in what they are doing. So that is the second reason why I switched. And the third reason is obviously the financial aspect of it. As I said, I am on a journey to financial independence and I plan on retiring very, very early. So the financial aspect and the financial income that came with it really was a plus and helped me achieve my goals. And yes, I am very fulfilled for the person who asked on Twitter, and I'm very happy with the company that I'm currently at. So that is it on today's video. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I really hope that you got value from the information that I shared and it helps you level up your own career or even do a career switch. But until I see you next week, that's it for today's video, and I will talk to you in the comment section down below. Bye!